morning after, the sports morning show meant to be drank with your morning coffee or eaten with your bowl of cereal. I'm your host, Shane Dunn, accompanied by Bryce Cohen, both of Benchwarmer Banter, and today we'll be breaking down the entire first 6 hours of NBA free agency. Bryce, what did you think of the first 6 hours?
Well, we knew we didn't have a super stacked free agent class this year. It's not one of those, not like the summer of 2019 where you had Katie and Kyrie going to Brooklyn. But we've definitely seen some really solid signings. It's not the A-plus, the superstar signings that make a championship roster. It's the little guys, the bench guys that will fill out your rotation that really make a championship roster. And that's what we're looking to see today. Who improved the roster? Who kind of stood still and made sure the roster was just in place from last season or kind of similar, and who really lost some key players. And I think we dive into that in its entirety today, and it's a pleasure to be alongside of you, Shane.
It's always a pleasure to be alongside you, Bryce. It's been a fun coming up on just past our 8-month anniversary. I'm very happy to announce that we're killing it. No, I'm not to brag too much, but if you haven't followed our Twitter, we've been reporting a lot on there. We've gained a couple hundred followers in just the last couple days, and I think that's where we've been most active the last couple weeks, just trying to draw in that crowd of 180 characters or less. But, I mean, how have you thought about the first 8 months before we break down this free agency class?
Oh, it's been a pleasure working with Benchwarmer Banter. It's honestly the best platform for us high schoolers and college guys getting ready to go into my freshman year at West Virginia. So, super psyched to be taking this project on the road with me, if you will. And be sure, to anyone on the road, anyone out there watching, listening today, make sure to look out for our regional college accounts coming soon, which will be shown more often August, September. But we got big stuff on the way. Benchwarmer Banter is rising to the top.
And you've probably seen those college counts already if you're a diehard follower of the account. Those will be launching a month from today, August 1st. I'm very excited for those. Bryce will be our main guy on West Virginia, and we got 3 other ones as of right now to look out for. If you haven't yet, check out our link tree in the description below. It has all of our socials on it. You can follow all of them. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter. I think that's about it. But make sure to follow us everywhere to keep updated on the best sports news and the best sports content. And let's get right into one of the biggest surprises to me today. By far not the biggest deal, and we'll get into that, but definitely a shock to me. Kyrie stays in Dallas. Now, Kyrie was signed to a 3-year, $126 million deal, which was honestly cheaper than I thought. I thought Kyrie was going to go for a max, personally. But he's running it back with Luka after a weird season last year. How do you feel about Kyrie staying in Dallas, committing to 3 more years?
Well, I think this is where Kyrie's going to kind of ride out into the sunset. This is the place he said when looking for a free agency destination to call it his last and new home. He said he wants to retire whatever team he signs with, and pretty shockingly, he re-signed with Dallas. I didn't see this coming, especially after they announced that if he did come back, he'd be wearing number 11 and not number 2. I found that kind of weird to announce that, if he comes back, he's not going to be wearing the jersey he wore last year. We're giving it to another guy already. I always seem to find that kind of weird, yet he still did sign with them. And he did not sign for the amount of money that people may expect him to. 3 years, $126 million for Kyrie. Not to say it's a bargain deal. $126 million. If I touched that in my lifetime, my kids' kids would be set up for life. But man, for Kyrie Irving, those aren't the top dollar that he used to be getting. So it's kind of shocking that he's getting that money. And we didn't see Kyrie and Luka Doncic play that well last year together. They went 5-11 in the games they played together, and Kyrie has struggled to stay healthy. So we're gonna have to really see how a full 82-game season will work out between the two of them. But it's kind of shocking that Kyrie is coming back to Dallas.
I think Kyrie wanted to go to Dallas even if he had to finish out a season with Brooklyn. I just feel like he does have a connection with that city. And re-signing kind of proved that. I mean, I think the biggest reason, there's 2 big reasons of why they didn't work well. 1, 16 games, didn't really get to play together. 2, they got fined for intentionally tanking. Like, that team wasn't trying to win games. So I think they're really just gearing up for the next season. And then the Suns rumors really freaked me out because I honestly, and the 2-11 thing also tripped me out a little bit too. I really didn't see him ending up in Dallas. I saw him ending up possibly, I heard rumors of Philly to replace James Harden. I heard rumors, like I said, on the Suns, which would have just not been fun in the slightest. But Dallas seems to be where he'll remain. And also joining him in Dallas, a little bit of an odd one for his third stint of his career, Seth Curry joins the Dallas Mavericks. I'm just, a 2-year deal, I'm just a little confused. I mean, he had not the best season last year. And he's really just getting older by the day. He turns 33 in August. We already have 2 great point guards on this squad. I know both of them play at the same time. One of them takes a shooting guard role. But you got Luka and Kyrie. I don't really see the room for Seth Curry, and I don't really see the rhyme or reason. Now, there wasn't too many players to get besides Seth Curry. I'm not saying they made the wrong decision by any means. But why Seth Curry is my only question.
Yeah, especially when you get a player like that, too. You usually get him for one of 3 reasons. Either he fits well into your scheme, he's an overall good player, or you got him for the best value. And I don't think they got any of the 3 there. He doesn't seem to fit in really well with this whole Kyrie-Luka tangent, and I'm kind of confused by it as well. I think it's going to be a weird dynamic to see. And what my only kind of hunch is that there are some rumblings amongst the Dallas Mavericks brass that is just so unconfident about the ability for both Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving to stay healthy and stay on the floor at the same time. So the only reason I could see them signing Seth Curry is if they don't think both are going to be playing at the same time. If they think one's going to be out with a long-term injury or there's going to be load management, that's the only time I could see him fitting in there. But at least they're getting a player they're familiar with. I mean, you said it yourself, 3rd stint with the team. How often do you see a player go back and forth, and then back and forth another time? I mean, I think it's kind of getting ridiculous at that point.
Off the top of my head, I can't really think of another player that's been bounced back and returned to a team 3 times. But I did like what you mentioned before about injury issues and stuff. It's a great point to why Seth Curry would be a great player on this team. But speaking of teams that look to be a little bit afraid of injury issues and kind of just have to build a bench, the Suns signed 6 players in just the first 6 hours. Those 6 being Drew Eubanks, Josh Okogie, Bates Diop, Damian Lee, Matu, and Yuta Watanabe. We have a super team, kind of. I feel like all of us think on paper this team is good, but I think all of us also know this team might not win the championship. We got Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, DeAndre Ayton, Bradley Beal. I like the aggressiveness. It just felt like there was a new Phoenix Sun every 2 minutes. I mean, Damian Lee re-signing, I think that's huge. I remember him on the Warriors. Great role player. And he's done his time on the Suns so far well. I'm not mad at any of these signings. I mean, like you said in the intro, a weaker free agency class. So I bet another star could have been signed another year. There's some players on the board still that I could have seen them getting, like D'Angelo Russell or Russell Westbrook, even to just pair up with KD. Would have been mental, but there were some players they could have gotten, but they're really just building a bench. It kind of reminds me in 2K when you do like an expansion team draft. These are the players that you'd get. I'm not hating it. I think this team is going to do well, top 4 in the West, but I don't think they're going to blow competition out of the water like many people are expecting.
And you also have to note, especially when talking about Kyrie having this alleged meeting plan with the Phoenix Suns as well. When you look at this Phoenix Suns team with Kevin Durant on it, I don't think there's any future in the NBA that holds Russell Westbrook, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant playing together on the same team ever again. I don't think any of those players match up with each other ever again. And I think Kyrie re-signing with Dallas and then the Suns kind of holding still and just signing their role players, I think that kind of sealed the deal. Obviously, we don't know what Harden's going to do. Russell Westbrook is still on the board as a free agent. But just let the guys stay away from each other. We see what happens. every time it's blown up, none of those guys have won a ring together. Kevin Durant is the only one amongst that group that has a ring.
I'll agree with you. I mean, Russ was just like kind of a random player I could have named. I don't think it would work either. But I mean, let's just look at some other free agents that are still on the board that they still could totally get. I mean, Kelly Oubre would be cool, and I bet he'd take a pay cut for a chance at a championship, just like I think most of these players would. Mason Plumlee, I mean, a decent backup big, will probably take a minimum. If he takes more than that, I'd be shocked. Mo Bamba, he could have gotten on this team, has a lot to prove, still a young guy who just never really got to break through.
Oh, that song, though.
That song's hard. I'm not going to lie. That song, there's not many like house songs that will get me like that. That song gets me ready to run through a wall. But another player
Shaq West is holding Mo Bamba together. Let's just say.
I think it's sad that more people know about Mo Bamba, the song, than they do about the NBA player. I mean, he's not incredible. He's not a household name because he's in the league. But Shaq West, really, I mean, Mo Bamba owes a lot to Shaq West, honestly. His jersey sales are probably through the roof.
Oh, yeah. And I'm correcting myself, too. When I mentioned that group of players, Kyrie Irving also has a ring. Got to mention that as well. But as you were saying, Mo Bamba has not had a real chance in this league to flourish yet. He was hurt with the Lakers, and I honestly think that pairing with the Lakers would have worked out well. I understand the reason to cut him. The Lakers are rebuilding. Well, not rebuilding, but they're reloading. And I think wherever Mo Bamba goes, if he is in a starting rotation, don't be surprised if he's putting up some good numbers. He's going to be a great facilitator for a team. I think, especially with the way Mo Bamba, his history and his career, I could see him going to a younger, scrappier team, kind of like Houston, who could use a guy in that 5 slot or even a guy to come off the bench. But Mo Bamba is the name to look out for in the next day or two for free agency. He's going to be one of those sneaky signings where he signs for not as much money as these other guys, maybe a $6 million, $7 million contract for a 1 year with a player option for maybe the next year. But he's going to be a player who comes into a team and he gives you good minutes. And if he stays healthy, he can put up some numbers that gets people in the league watching him.
Now, to bounce off of Mo Bamba a little bit, but get back into the team that waived him, the Lakers made some pretty big moves in free agency. Let's start with the light ones. Hachimura stays. I think that was huge for their team because Hachimura honestly came up big this season for them and kind of showed a lot more than I was expecting. So keeping Hachimura, keeping a younger core on that LeBron-oriented team, I like it. It means LeBron likes Hachimura. That's exactly what that means if they re-signed him, in my opinion.
For $51 million for 3 years as well. That's no slight money.
It's not even in the slightest, but let's talk about another crazy contract on this Lakers team. Gabe Vincent signed with the Los Angeles Lakers. I never saw it coming. It might have been photoshopped or whatever. People guessed it. I personally never saw Gabe Vincent going there. And also, I understand he got 3 years, $33 million a year. He turned down a 4-year, $34 million contract with the Heat. So I was I understand it's less money. But it's also he has more to prove still. He had a very good Eastern Conference Finals run and then didn't do anything in the finals. I understand why he took the $33 million. It's a good choice by him. But I understand why Miami only offered $34 over 4 years.
And when you look at Miami's roster as well, they're dumping money off the books. They're not looking to sign some of these players for big money. And what could be the reason behind that? Don't be shocked if you hear Miami try to gear up for a Damian Lillard trade. Now that is a whole other, loophole you could jump through, and there's so many hoops you got to jump through to make that trade happen. But they just traded Victor Oladipo as well, just to get his money off the books. So don't be surprised if Miami has bigger plans in stores. Now, given when you look at Damian Lillard as a trade target as well, you also have to think about who Portland just signed to big money. And you know who I'm talking about, Shane.
What the hell? I mean, what are we doing, Portland? Jerami Grant, who, no slight towards Jerami Grant, incredible player, not worth $160 million over 5 years. I mean, unless, like, the only way I could see it even possibly happening was, like, Damian Lillard pulled the trigger on that trade, which is very unlikely. So if not, even if you know Dame's out the door, even if you know Dame's off his team, who in the world signs Jerami Grant to a $160 million contract over 5 years? No slight towards Jerami, but that's so far, like, not per year, but that's the biggest contract in free agency so far, I believe. I think it's Van Fleet with 130 over 3, but he's getting 160 in total. That's by far the most money on the board right now.
And you got to watch as well. They're going to kind of structure that contract where more money comes on the back end. Those last 2-3 years are going to be loaded with the average per year. It's not going to be a good contract on the books for Portland. And this is a team that was one of the worst in the league last year. One of the worst. And of course you get Scoot Henderson in the draft. And of course you have Damian Lillard. But why in the world are you re-signing a guy, you're extending him for 5 years when he puts up, over the last season, he's put up one of the quietest 20-point-per-game seasons you could see in the whole league. Nobody's watching this guy. And I got to say, too, like you said, no slight to Jerami Grant, dude. You got your bag. Rich Paul has your back. But there is no reason, unless Portland legitimately thinks they can compete in the West, that this guy should have been signed for this much money. That's the bottom line.
The other thing I thought of was, like, maybe someone offered him something in that realm, but I don't see another team doing it either. There's nothing in my brain. They shot themselves in the foot. They just set themselves back for 5 seasons because it doesn't matter what season it is, what CBA gets created. No one is trading that contract unless they're trying to dump money, which is what OKC did with Victor Oladipo, or Miami did with Victor Oladipo. $9.45 million. I want to bring it back to Dame to Miami. I don't see another choice for Dame. Besides other teams, I'm saying I don't even think the fans want him anymore. It's not fair to Dame in the slightest what's happening. It's like they finally start doing something right. They're getting high enough draft picks. It looks like it could work out. They could be suiting up for a big trade, people are saying, and then 5 years, $160 million. I'll never understand it. But I want to bounce to another awful team. The Washington Wizards kind of did a great job today.
Well, when you look at Kyle Kuzma, dude, this is a guy that, evidently led Washington, an injured team last year, who did not compete that well. In points, tied with Kristaps Porzingis. Like, you got to see the holistic view of this. It's a good deal to keep your player, but him and Jordan Poole are not carrying you in that stacked Eastern Conference. Are they trying to compete? I'm confused. You trade away Bradley Beal, who's most definitely your best player, and you got a bit of a haul in return. It wasn't the best haul. Arguably, people would say, well, they're just trying to get rid of him. But if they're just trying to get rid of him and they're still trying to compete, unless he really jammed his way out of there, why would you sign Kyle Kuzma to this deal and still trade away your best player for not much of a return? It's still pretty baffling to me that they gave Kuzma this much money over 4 years, and they're not even going to really try to compete for maybe the first 2. That's going to be terrible. It's going to be bad. Oh, so bad.
I'd even argue that they lost the 3-team trade with Porzingis and Memphis.
The Celtics got Kristaps Porzingis, which, by the way, signed a 2-year extension this afternoon as well. The Celtics got Kristaps Porzingis and 2 first-rounders in that deal. The Celtics, by far, destroyed that trade. And I'm shocked that, given Marcus Smart, hell of a player, a guy you don't want to lose in your locker room. But those 2 first-round draft choices, if Memphis just blows it up this year, we know John Morant and Marcus Smart is not clicking and the team can't function, that could be a lottery pick. Who knows in this Western Conference? That could be a pick that ends up turning into the 4th pick or the 5th pick. And next year, by no means is going to be a bad draft. You got a lot of cool names coming next year. And highlighted in that is LeBron James Jr. as well. So the 2024 draft is going to have some pretty big implications based on who's selecting where with some of these first-round draft choices that are being thrown around. But Washington seems like they're kind of stuck in the middle here. They've got players that they want to compete with, but they don't have all the tools to compete in Eastern Conference that has at least 8 or 9 good teams that are going to be vying for playoff spots this year. And now, given if you sneak into the play-in, you saw what Miami Heat did this year. It's not like you're going to get completely counted out, but it is just so unlikely when you have the Celtics, the Sixers, the Knicks, the Cavaliers. There's so many teams in this Eastern Conference that are going to be way better than Washington, who has Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma on this loaded deal playing as their 1 and 2. It's sort of baffling to me, Shane.
Now I hate to totally switch up the conversation, but I had my phone on Do Not Disturb. This is live. I don't really care. It's 12:30 in the morning right now, and the Pacers made another huge move just now. The biggest contract of free agency thus far. Tyrese Halliburton has re-signed, agreed to a 5-year, $260 million deal to stay with Indiana.
Worth every penny. Every penny, dude.
Couldn't agree more. And also, they got Bruce Brown today for 2 years, $45 million. Indiana is trying to do something, and I'm a big fan of it.
I like this. And not switching up the topic, but just mentioning as well, like we said, this is coming hot at 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. Desmond Bane of Memphis just scored a 5-year, $207 million max contract extension with the Grizzlies. That is also huge. We'll dive into both of these, but first off, with Indiana is a sleeper team. I love Halliburton. He is the all-star that he earned this year, and I would not be surprised if he is all-pro first team next year. He is shifty. He's electric. And Indiana, especially with Bruce Brown today as well, which we've talked about this, Shane. Bruce Brown getting this contract today is kind of like him getting his flowers. He's getting the credit he deserved for the amazing run he's had with the Nuggets, and I think that's going to mesh really well with the way Halliburton plays. And that's a good Indiana team that's going to compete very, very well this year. I think they can make a solid run in the postseason.
I love Indiana. I really wish they were a more successful team in the past. They've always been a fun team to watch, fun color scheme. I love Halliburton and Brown as a duo, and I really think this kind of pushed them. You know, they were good last season for what they had, but not even close to a playoff contender. I think at the very bare minimum, this team's a play-in team next year. But I want to hop into the Memphis one because this team is heading in such an odd direction that I don't know where it's going. I love that Desmond Bane, is signed to this team, and he's absolutely killed it from just a progression standpoint. Doubled his points per game from his rookie to sophomore season. Sophomore season was averaging 18.2 points a game, which is mental because the Grizzlies have been good for the last 2 seasons. Last season, in 58 games, averaged 21 a game, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. Next to Ja and company, that was a good team all year. Memphis, it kind of is looking really good. I mean, I like Marcus Smart, Ja Morant, Desmond Bane now, who really could be a great offensive dual threat with Ja because we all know Marcus Smart was more of a defensive hire, in my opinion.
Right.
But I mean,
I also like Jaren Jackson Jr. with that team as well. I mean,
absolutely, yeah.
He's going for the franchise as well.
I think that's 2 defensive players of the year just in the starting lineup.
You also have to mention, and it's a sneaky signing, Derrick Rose going to Memphis. And I don't think he's going there as much as he is to, he's not going there to play high-level basketball. He's going to be a solid role player. But what is he going to do to impact the career of Ja Morant? You have to look at this over the span of the multi-year contract that Derrick Rose signed this afternoon. Ja Morant's going to be suspended the first 25 games of the season. It's no secret at this point. It's been reported on for many weeks now. But how is he going to be able to mentor Ja, not only on the court, but off the court? That's going to be something to watch throughout the year. And I do like that signing. But this extension with Bane is super important as well, because Bane is heading into the prime of his career. And there have been talks about what kind of contract he's going to be getting. I didn't expect the max, but he's borderline been putting up numbers that are going to be potentially all-star production level next season, especially without Ja Morant next year for the first 25 games. I wouldn't expect anything less than a max contract for him at this point. For him to be locked up, as well as these other guys, the Grizzlies kind of have it set up. It's a weird direction, and I don't like how the Grizzlies kind of have this, it's almost like a hypocritical kind of thing, where they allow Ja Morant to have this poor behavior, and he ends up getting suspended by the NBA. But then when Dylan Brooks is this kind of over-the-top, obnoxious player who doesn't really have, all the talent to back it up, that's the guy they want to really get rid of. It kind of shows that, Memphis has this wishy-washy kind of backbone that they've used to support their franchise, and it's a weird direction they're taking. But I think the Marcus Smart trade allowed this extension with Bane to happen as well, because now they're really gearing up for the second half of the season to really try to make a run for the championship. And maybe Memphis pulls something off, but it's going to be a weird season for sure.
I mean, let's just look at this team on paper for a second. Just Ja Morant, coming back in at game 26. It's huge for him, honestly, because not only does he have time to grow into himself a little bit more, he has a little bit of time, he'll be on the sidelines and stuff. He'll be with the team always. He'll be practicing. He's still in the team culture, so it's kind of a second chance. If he's clean as a whistle the first quarter of the season, third of the season, I'd say it looks really good for Ja. And you have Derrick Rose joining the team. He's played 53 games combined in the last 2 seasons. His minutes were cut in half last season. It was his lowest scoring season ever. Doesn't matter. He's going to get minutes on this Memphis team next year because there's not an abundance of talent on this team when you really look at it. Just the first 25 games is going to be tough. I think they could still pull off maybe 12 and 13, 13 and 12, around 500, maybe a little bit under. But you got Steven Adams at center, which is huge for this team. Always going to be a great center, never going to be a liability. Jaren Jackson Jr. at power forward. You got Marcus Smart playing between point, shooting guard. Desmond Bane, small forward, probably going to lead the team in scoring in that first quarter of the season. Luke Kennard still on this team. Kenny Lofton Jr. is going to start getting some minutes on this team. And then you have a fresh Ja Morant. 25 games off is huge for his durability for the rest of the season, especially the way he plays, how athletic he is. We've seen players like Derrick Rose just run out of legs in their career. This is going to help him long-term by a lot. And I really like the Grizzlies standing at the moment. And I think it's going to be a fun and a very interesting season for them. It's going to be fun to report on and talk about the entire season.
You also have to look at this, too. We know how the NBA schedule works. They don't release the schedule until mid to late August for a reason. I would not be surprised if the Grizzlies' first 25-game schedule is against teams that aren't the most competitive. It's going to be some teams like the Rockets, the Pistons, and such. And it's going to be kind of a way to ease the Grizzlies into the season. That's my prediction. There's really no basis on that. But I'd imagine no real primetime matchups. You're not going to be seeing them on ABC at 7 p.m. on a Saturday night. But this is a team that once they gain Ja Morant back, like you said, a fresh Ja Morant, 25 games into the season where you know whether you're going to be competing super well or you're going to really need that boost. I mean, everybody else is going to be starting to feel the wear and tear of the NBA season. And then you throw in one of the best, if not the best, driving to the rim guards in the NBA at Ja Morant, who's going to be getting the utmost help from Derrick Rose himself, who, if he can just show Ja Morant what he, used to be able to do in 2011, 2012, this is going to be one of those seasons where you look back and you say, can you remember that Ja Morant was suspended for the first 25 games and they still made the run that they did? The Grizzlies are gearing up for something special, and it's confusing. That's to say the least. It's confusing, but it's something where if they're able to navigate it correctly, the Grizzlies got something special going on.
Let's talk about something else that's a little bit confusing. Fred VanVleet became the highest paid undrafted player of all time, signing with the Houston Rockets today. 3 years, $130 million, more than Kyrie is getting paid in Dallas. He just came off a 19.3 points per game season, 4.1 rebounds a game, career high 7 assists per game. That's pretty big. But the consensus around anyone I've spoken to, this is an overpayment. This is kind of a bad move by the Rockets almost. I mean, a very young core that they don't know what to do with. I mean, we've seen them struggle the last couple seasons unless a big trade was to be set off there. The beard, James Harden comes back to Houston. I mean, this is just a lot of money. VanVleet is great, and he should get paid this money. But I just didn't think the Houston Rockets would be the team to do it.
You also have to look at it like this. He is 29 years old. Obviously, a 3-year contract is not holding him down for the rest of his life. But you're not going to be getting the best years of his basketball. We could all say maybe his championship run with Toronto is probably about the best it's going to get. But for a team as young as Houston, I really can't imagine them being that competitive for maybe the first year. So then you've got this $43 million contract a year, and then you're trying to build a roster that's not all that competitive. It's going to be tough for Houston. And obviously they just drafted the first one of the Thompson twins. It's going to be a weird year for sure for Houston. But let's say they make another splash. You throw in the hypothetical Harden trade there, but what are they going to even be able to trade for Harden? And then you're taking on that $33 million contract for just 1 year. It's a rental. Unless they're going to put all the chips in for just 1 year, I don't think Houston's got anything special going on. I think this is an overpay. And I also like to add that him going for more than Kyrie Irving is just ridiculous. I mean, these are both two guards that signed to play in the great state of Texas. And Fred VanVleet is getting paid more than Kyrie Irving. I think in what universe is what I would say. And if the fact that it's here, it's quite ridiculous. And I don't know what Houston is trying to do. What are they trying to accomplish here? It's weird. We're going to have to wait for the situation to develop, but it's kind of head scratching, Shan.
I'd say the best part about it was that it wasn't a 5-year, $190, $210 million contract. It's only 3 seasons. He's only there until 2026. That's the only good thing about this. Him getting paid more than Kyrie is a sin. It's night and day between them. Kyrie is one of, if not the best ball handler in NBA history. He has a championship to his name. So does Fred. But, I mean, let's not mess around now. Kyrie's was way more Kyrie than Fred was for his. Fred's was all Kawhi. Kyrie hit many big shots in those series. I'm just saying, Kyrie has had a more illustrious career, has had better stats by a mile. Yes, he's been much more of a headache. And every offseason, it feels like he's going to go to a new team. And every halfway point of every season, it feels like he's going to go to a new team. But he still should be paid more than Fred VanVleet.
And I'd like to add, too, when you look at this contract for Kyrie Irving, obviously he's in the latter half of his career, and he's looking like he's on the brink of retirement. And obviously, he's had an extensive injury history. He's had reasons to be off the court. But I would still give him the same amount, if not more, than Fred VanVleet. And I would take Kyrie over Fred VanVleet any day of the week. So, obviously, Houston most likely did not have the opportunity to even speak with Kyrie, let alone offer him. But to give VanVleet that money is just such an overpay. And I would have just flat out stepped away from the situation altogether. I didn't think this is a year that Houston needs to go sign what they think is a bona fide superstar. Fred VanVleet has not proved anything outside of Toronto for, the 2 years that he was really good. Last year was pretty much an off year for the entire Toronto. That core in Toronto, especially with Pascal Siakam, has been very bad. They had, obviously, Nick Nurse got fired as well. It's a team that was completely dismantled, and then you decided to inherit the broken goods, the damaged goods in Fred VanVleet. I think it's a head scratcher. It's mind boggling. It makes you wonder: does Houston have another corresponding move that'll make it make more sense? Because if not, we're going to be watching the Houston Rockets play maybe competitive basketball for 30 games, and then they're going to go tank again in the lottery and just try to get a top pick for another 2 years of VanVleet? Makes no sense.
No, and the fact that he's turning 32 when this ends also is a big problem for me. If it was the 2019 free agency, like he got 60, if he was a free agent in that class, if he got like 60 mil for 2 years, I get that. That wasn't his team. Someone would have wanted to see him have his own team. The thing is, he's had his own team since Kawhi left, debatably. The keys have been his. I don't know why this contract happened. I don't think anyone saw this contract happening. Good for Fred and his agent. I always want to say that when people get overpaid, because it's not exactly his fault. It's kind of the Rockets are just stupid. I really hope this turns into something for them. I hope we're all just being duped right now, saying he's being overpaid. Then we're like, oh, that makes sense. I hope that happens. I want to see the Rockets do well. But geez, 130 over. There's been a lot of overpaying this free agency in a weak class at that. There's been a lot of people just selling their souls this free agency to get bare minimum players.
Yeah, and just a kind of a general theme of this free agency as well is think about it like supply and demand, Shane. There is a limited supply, but there's a whole lot of demand. I would not be surprised if the VanVleet contract talks escalated super quickly to get to the number that it reached today. And let's just say hypothetically, VanVleet is the NBA leading scorer this year. Let's say he throws up 33 points a game, which is unlikely to say the least. Is Houston even still competitive? Are they winning games in the Western Conference as well? I think no.
The only way VanVleet puts up 33 points a game is if the team goes like 10-72 and he plays all 82 games.
But even then, I still think not only is he wasting 3 years of his prime, which I still think his prime is sort of past, but obviously he's putting all of his chips on the table now. I think he's wasting at least a year this year with a rebuilding team. And then even next year, unless they make a huge splash, there's really not that many names in the free agency pool now that can supply this Houston Rockets. Are they going to go out and get Russell Westbrook? Are they going to go out and get D'Angelo Russell? Who else is out there right now that can supply this Houston Rockets team and what they need to even come close to vying for a playoff spot in the West?
A lot of these signings haven't made sense thus far, but I want to get into one that makes sense. Draymond Green got paid today, which is huge. The Golden State Warriors core stays together. 4-time NBA champions Golden State Warrior core stays together. 4 years, $100 million for Draymond. Didn't expect a penny less. Well-deserved. 12th season with Golden State upcoming this year. I mean, 8.7 points a game, 7 rebounds a game as a Warrior. I have no issues with this signing. I think Draymond has been surprisingly becoming... I think Draymond has surprisingly become more controversial just in this season. I mean, there was the whole Steven Adams incident. It felt like he could get in a fight with anybody in the league, but as of late, I really feel like Draymond, he punched Jordan Poole in the face. He's just caused a lot of a ruckus lately. It wasn't a guarantee that Draymond was going to be a Golden State Warrior. Some people said Memphis, which would have been insane. Some people, he was rumored to be going to a lot of teams, but Golden State was the heavy favorite, and it happened, and I'm happy for Draymond, and I think the Warriors are going to have a way better season than people are predicting. I mean, you got Chris Paul coming off the bench, most likely. Curry at point. Clay still starting. Draymond still starting. This is still a very good core four. That's a great bench piece for Chris Paul. And I think Chris Paul, despite the irony of him joining the Golden State Warriors, the team that he could never get past, the team that he said he trained to beat every season, that was their only goal in Houston, I think he's going to have a lot of fun on the Warriors. And I think Golden State is going to end up loving him. And I think the whole Steve Kerr side-eye joke thing, I think that's going to be played a lot this season. And I think they're going to play on it. Chris Paul's a funny guy. He's going to have fun in Golden State. That's my prediction. And I mean, Draymond, 4 years, $100 million, great for Draymond.
Worth mentioning as well, he has that fourth-year player opt-out. And by that point, I would see him maybe retiring. I can't imagine him lasting another 4 years in the league. After this contract ends, I think he rides out into the sunset. But they also kind of got Draymond at a discount. I expect him to sign at $33 million a year. So I wonder if he got any other offers on the table. I mean, he tested the waters with free agency. But I think his main objective was to come back with Golden State. But, I wonder if he was offered maybe $33 million a year for 2 or 3 years with maybe Sacramento. Or, like you said, maybe Memphis. But him coming back to the Warriors, it just extends their what seems to never end championship window. I mean, another 4 years. That would be like a decade-long championship window for the Golden State Warriors. Who's to say they don't throw in another chip or two in the next 4 years with the players they have, and now throwing Chris Paul in the mix as well? Who knows how that dynamic will work? I think it's going to be, like you said, it's going to be a funny one.
But at the end of the day, I think the Warriors are going to have maybe a confusing season, something that's going to raise a lot of questions. But I still think they make a run for the championship. I can't imagine them not making it past the second round this year. But on the topic of weird free agent signings, we also have a lot of free agents that haven't signed. Some of these being super surprising. I'll start off. I think Austin Reeves not coming back to the Lakers yet, or not getting signed anywhere, just shows that maybe he didn't have the market we expected. People were expecting Austin Reeves to come back from the Lakers on a 4-year, $80 million contract, and that has not even come to fruition yet. There hasn't been any rumblings about that yet. So I'd imagine something's going on there with Austin Reeves. Maybe there are some questions about him that haven't been answered yet, and I don't know if the Lakers are going to even offer him. The Lakers made a lot of signings today. Who knows?
Another player leaving the Lakers that I'm surprised hasn't been picked up, D'Angelo Russell. I mean, there's a few teams that need a point guard or are in search of a point guard that kind of shocked didn't get a point guard. I mean, we saw Dennis Schroeder replace Van Fleet in Toronto. I would have rather seen D'Angelo Russell in Toronto. I would have also rather seen Russell Westbrook in Toronto than Dennis Schroeder. No slight to Dennis Schroeder, but a little bit. I mean, he's not that incredible. I don't think that's a ridiculous thing to say. I think he's way past his prime. I mean, this guy's been on the Lakers twice, and it hasn't worked either time. I mean, I could have seen Toronto going with either D'Lo or Russ, but they kind of locked themselves into Schroeder, which kind of is an issue, honestly. But I also want to get into a team that hasn't made a peep yet in the now 7 hours that we've been open for business. The New York Knicks haven't done a thing. And Bryce, I want you to kind of get into it. You say it's a positive.
Well, I think it's a positive because of this. You look at the other teams in the Eastern Conference, and a lot of them are reloading, yes. But you look at some of the competition that the Knicks had and faced last year, the 76ers being a big one. The 76ers have some question marks around the team. I think the biggest one is obviously James Harden. People don't know what James Harden's going to do, but they know he's not going to be a Sixer next year. I think the Eastern Conference, in some aspects, is getting weaker and in some is getting stronger. Pretty general statement, I know. But the Knicks got, a sneaky good play with Josh Hart coming back, opting into his deal. And I think if they don't make any signings, or maybe just get Dante DiVincenzo, that could be enough for the Knicks to make a good run this season. Obviously, it's an age-old idea in basketball that, you go to the second round of the playoffs one year and you're expected to make it at least back to the second round next. But obviously, that's not guaranteed. The biggest thing, though, is that the Knicks have all these pieces and all these assets. And you think back to Obi Toppin with that leaked audio from the playoffs, which has kind of swirled around the Knicks universe up until this point of the offseason. I feel like the Knicks are gearing up for a trade, and I don't know who, and I don't know for what, but it seems like the Knicks have all these pieces and all these assets, and they haven't used any of their money up yet. Who are they trying to get and sign for a long-term extension? Are they waiting for another player from a different team to be disgruntled, like a superstar? Are they waiting for someone like Giannis Antetokounmpo to be frustrated in Milwaukee? That's a stretch, of course, but you can imagine if there's someone at the trade deadline this upcoming season who is frustrated with the team and wants to get out badly, the Knicks have the money and the assets to do it. And I think them sitting still right now is just gearing up for them to make a huge run in the second half of the season. And it's something to really watch out for. I mean, you think about another team that has kind of sat still, the Utah Jazz. They've really made very few moves, if any, up until this point in the free agency. They're another team you could look out for to try to make a big run at a superstar who's frustrated. Obviously, you saw them trade away Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell within the span of an offseason last year. Let's see what happens with both of these teams this year when it comes to looking for a superstar that they want to make their own. So, at the end of the day, the Knicks may not sign a single player until day 2 or day 3. I mean, technically, we're already on day 2. But they're still, with the players and the assets they have, ready to go this season, without a doubt. And running it back with Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle, if both of them are healthy, I can't see the Knicks getting bounced in the first round this year. And I really can't see the Knicks not competing for a top 3 seed in the East.
Top 3 seed in the East is a very, very bold prediction for the Knicks, and I love it. And I also love that for the first time in franchise history, the Knicks are playing off-season basketball like everybody else. We're finally not pretending like every season we have a quote-unquote super team and we're running for a championship that year. We're slowly building, and it finally feels like something's going for the Knicks. And it's nice for the last coming up on 50 years, the Knicks have done diddly squat. So I'm happy to see the Knicks making an educated decision in the offseason. I mean, I bet Joakim Noah's somewhere flopping in like Austria or something. And I bet we'll offer him $70 million by the end of the offseason over like 11 years because we're an awful franchise. But I'm happy with what we're doing, and I'm very happy we got Josh Hart back. But I mean, Bryce, as it stands, 1:01 a.m., I mean, definitely, I'm just going to say this about the overall free agency 7 hours. More exciting than I thought. Like, it started off slow, had very boring stints. Like, I mean, I can't believe that I had to write down Trey Lyles got re-signed. Like, that was the third, fourth signing. I mean, it's definitely been slower than in years past, but how have you felt about the free agency?
Well, I think that the biggest theme of this offseason, and I mentioned this in the supply and demand, has been the fact that these players who you might not expect in a normal kind of super exciting offseason are getting the money that at least they think they deserve. I think the Van Fleet contract is a huge example of that. The Jerami Grant one. But I also think that this offseason has been tame in the fact that you don't have a lot of players that are trying to force their way out of situations that really aren't that bad of situations. I mean, Kyrie Irving not leaving the Dallas Mavericks is 100% my biggest surprise. I think everybody wrote the Dallas Mavericks off, but when you think about it in hindsight, he forced a trade out of Brooklyn. He wasn't going to force him to a place where he didn't want to go and then stay there. So I think him going to Dallas, obviously having a weird stint there for the first season, but coming back, that was a bit of a shock to me, but now it makes sense. So I think this offseason has been exciting. It hasn't been all that flashy, but when it comes down to the last 2 months of the season, some of these names that are being signed to these bigger contracts today could be making an impact that you wouldn't even imagine now, when it comes to playoff time. And who knows where some of these teams in the West will stand, like the Grizzlies, the Rockets. I mean, there are some teams who are going to be vying for the 6, 7, 8 seed and the play-in seeds that you might have not even expected at the beginning of this offseason. So today has been really important for every NBA team. I also think that the teams that are really losers at the end of the day are the teams that had a good team running into the 2022 season that lost their key pieces. So you think about Miami. Miami is going to be losing maybe Max Strus. They lost Gabe Vincent. They retained Kevin Love. But who's to say that they have that same magic as last season as they did this season? Then you look at a team like the 76ers who has question marks all over the board. Who knows if Joel Embiid will be happy without another superstar by his side? Who knows whether Joel Embiid will be a Sixer by the end of next season? It's going to be a very interesting season, not just for these little guys who are being signed into contracts to be role players or to put up 15, 20 points a game, but for these super mega stars who are going to be maybe frustrated when their team's not having the success that they expected to at the beginning of the season.
It was a fun morning after. Kind of funny to think that we're up at like 1 a.m. doing this. We're pretty lively, though, I think, for an hour podcast. Our longest podcast in Benchwarmer Banter history. I just want to give us a little, pat on the back for that. This was fun. I'm really hoping for day 2 to be worthy of an episode. If anything crazy happens, I'd love to do another one. And, I mean, this was fun. I love doing the morning after. I think it's a cool concept. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope a lot of you made it to this mark. But, Bryce, if there's anything you want to say?
I think today was a fun day for the NBA offseason. Maybe not the most exciting signings, but the important ones that happened today. And we're going to see some big names fly off the board tomorrow and the day after. So, interesting one we have here with this NBA offseason, but there's more to come.
Go to Linktree in our bio and follow all of our socials. Everyone have a great rest of your day. And I hope we made your morning a little bit better. I hope you're not missing out on anything. Got a lot to talk about the water cooler today, where you think Russell Westbrook's going and such. But like I said, good morning, have a good one, and peace out.